everyone, my name is Keely and I'm the owner and creator here at Soy and Shea, and thank you so much for joining me for another soap making video. I'd like to start by saying a huge thank you for all of your lovely comments that you do leave to me, especially my last behind the scenes video where I explained that someone had taken one of my videos and popped it onto their own channel. The good news is I was able to get that taken down under a copyright claim, so that has now all been sorted out, and I greatly appreciate all of your suggestions about things that I could do in the video to try and stop people from doing that. I do have a couple of videos in backlog at the moment that I'm editing where I can't implement any of that now, so we will just have the little symbol up in the corner there, but I've got a few other ideas about things that we can do to make sure that it is obvious that they are my videos and to try and deter them from taking them. But for today's video, a few months ago, in fact about 10 months ago, I made this soap, and it is a Lemon Myrtle soap that was used doing the Clyde slide, and I will leave a link up in the corner so you can go and see how I made this video. Now, unfortunately, not long after I actually made this soap, I realised that it had completely lost its fragrance. Just the particular sort of oil that I used just did not hold. So these soaps have been sitting on my shelves for that long now, and I've decided it's time I actually do something about them. I'm fed up of actually using these ones in the shower now. So I've decided I'm going to rebatch them. And while I was on my little travels of learning how to rebatch an old soap, because I have rebatched freshly made soap before, I came across a video by Kenny, the Messy Soaper, over at Royal Appleberry, and I really liked what she did with her rebatch. I will also leave a link to her video so you can see what she did. Let's go and rebatch this Lemon Myrtle soap. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do to actually rebatch this soap is I am going to take my grater and I'm going to grate all of these soaps down into some shreds. Now, because this is older soap, and you know it's almost a year old, it is going to shred up nicely, and it's also hopefully not going to really clump together because it is already nice and dry. Now, BMB Artistry, they did recommend the last time they saw that I did a soap shredding video to get a salad shredder. Thank you for that information. Next time I go out, I will certainly have a look at getting one, because I think it will be a lot quicker than actually hand grating. So I'm going to get these, we've got 8 bars. Yep, 8 bars all shredded up, and then we'll come back for the next bit. So we are down to this very last bar that I'm grating down, and then it's ready to move on to the next step. Some of you guys came up with this awesome idea about writing my business name on my gloves. So what I've done is I've gone and actually got a sticker, which is one of the stickers I use to seal up my my parcels when I pack them up, and I thought that will do for this video. We'll stick that on there until we can actually work out something a little bit more permanent. So I am almost to the end of this piece, and I'm going to get all of this soap into this crock pot. This is a 6-litre crock pot that I'm using, so it looks like my 8 bars are going to fit into this just perfectly. But if you do have more soap than what's going to fit into your crock pot while it's in this state, fill it up as much as you possibly can, and then as we start melting this down, you can start adding more of your soap shreds into it. Alright, so I'm going to get all of these little bits into my crock pot so we don't have any wastage, and then I'm going to go and weigh how much I have in here. Okay, so I have weighed this, and I've got about 1.1 kilos of soap shred in here, and I've just popped it onto my crock pot base, and I am turning it up to high just to get it nice and warm, and then I will turn it down to low once my pot's nice and warm here. Now, to help get this starting to melt, I have some goat's milk here. You can add any liquid from what I've been reading into this. It's just to help it melt down. Now, the amount of liquid that you need is really very dependent on how old your soap is. If it's a newly handmade soap and you're actually just rebatching pretty much fresh soap that is still really moist, you know, easy to manipulate and that sort of thing, you don't need very much liquid. Because this is 10-month-old soap, I'm going to need a little bit more liquid to help get this melted down. But it really is one of those how long is a piece of string kind of questions of how much liquid that you need. I want this to actually be quite runny once it's melted down, so I'm going to start off with about 2% of weight of my goat's milk in there. That's 2% of the total weight of that soap shreds. Alright, so I'll make a bit of a correction there, sorry. I actually added 20% weight of the goat's milk into this. If you add too much liquid, providing you're not going completely overboard, if you do add a little bit too much liquid into it, all it means is that you do need to actually cure this soap for a little bit before you can use it. Technically with rebatch soap you can pretty much use it as soon as it's, you know, cut, once it's cooled down, because it's all gone through that saponification process. But often people will leave it on the side just to kind of dry out any of that additional liquid that they are adding into it. So if you do add a little bit too much liquid, providing you haven't got a really wet soap, you just need to leave it to cure for a couple of weeks before you can use it. So it is no big deal. You can pretty much eyeball it. You can, you know, add a few spoonfuls at a time until it comes to the consistency that you want. But I'm pretty sure that's going to be enough for me. In this little jar, I actually now do have 2% worth of sodium lactate. And that's just because I want to try and help it unmold out of some of the molds that I'm going to use. So I'm going to leave this one on high. And I'm going to come back about every 30 minutes and I'm going to give it a stir. Okay, so this has been going for about half an hour. You can see that we've got considerably less in this pot now. Just giving it a bit of a stir to see how we're going. I've still got lots of soap in here which needs to melt down, but you can see that it is slowly turning to liquid. So I'm going to leave it sit here again for another half hour and then I'll come back and I will give it another stir. And I have got this on low as well. Okay, so this has been sitting here for just over an hour now and I can see that it is all nicely melting down. There are still a few chunks of soap in here, but I honestly don't think that they're going to melt down any more than what they have if they haven't already done so in this hour's time. Now what I've seen most people do at this point is put in their fragrance, any other sort of things that they want to add into it, and then they plop it into a mold. And it gives a really rustic looking bar of soap, and some say it actually does also prolong the life of a bar of soap or make it last longer just because of the processes it has gone through. Now what I really liked when I watched Royal Appleberry with Kenny is that at this point she starts to whip it. So that is what I'm going to do. Before I get my hand mixer in here though, I'm going to add my essential oils. Now the really good thing I've been reading about doing your rebatch soap is that this doesn't affect any of these more delicate sort of ingredients that you add into it. So even though these are citrus essential oils, which are notorious for disappearing out of soap, because it's already gone through the saponification process, these essential oils actually shouldn't be affected by any more processing of this soap. And I've also read you can add things like jojoba beads and that sort of thing and they're not affected. So I'm going to mix this in. The blend I've just put in here is, again, I found on the essential oils calculator. I had some lime essential oil, some bergamot and some lemongrass, and it is smelling really good. So let's get this started to mix up. Alright, so to really get this going well, I need this to be a lot wetter than what it is. So I'm going to pour in just a little bit more of goat's milk and then whip it up a bit more. Okay, that is looking much better. I still want this to be quite fluid, whereas when I first started to mix it, you could see that it went really dry, even with all of that essential oil that I put in here. and adding that extra goat's milk has made this go nice and fluid again. It will mean that I will need to sit it out on my curing rack for about 2 to 3 weeks just to fully dry out any of this liquid, but that's no harm really, it's just a little bit of patience. What I'm going to do is leave this sit here for a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to whip it up again. Happy with how that is looking, so I'm going to get as much of this as I can off my little beaters here while it's still hot. One of the things to really remember with doing a rebatch of soap is that it cools down really quick, so the minute it comes into air it will start setting up. So I'm going to get as much of this off while it is still warm enough, and then I'm going to start looking at putting it into a mold. So I've just pushed that out of the way. I do still have it on low just to make sure that it stays nice and fluid. And I am going to use this soap mold, which I made a long time ago when I first started making. And I kind of just overestimated how big to make this. So this is kind of like my man mold. And it makes it really nice big size bar of soap. But I figured I'm going to use this one because I'm going to cut these bars slightly differently. And this mold is going to give me that perfect shape. So what I'm going to do is start spooning this quickly in here, just keeping in mind that it is going to set up quickly. It is going to be a plop plop, and then I'm going to give it a good old smack down as well. So I have given this one a really good smack down. I'm not going to do too much to zhuzh up the top because this sets up so quickly that it's just not going to really hold anything. I'm hoping it's going to hold this little bit of salt that I am sprinkling over the top. I'm just going to give it a bit of a push just to make sure that it actually goes in, just to give it a little bit of something. Otherwise it's basically going to be just a green soap. You can see I can actually push down on it and nothing really happens. So that is looking all right there. So I am actually going to leave this one set up, and then I will come back and I'll let you know how long I've had to leave it to set up before we can actually cut this one open. I am back to cut open this soap. Now after about 24 hours I was able to take it out the mold and take the paper off, but I still felt that it was a little bit too soft for me to be able to cut. So I've left this sitting here for about another 30 hours, probably more closer to maybe 40, and now I'm ready to actually cut it. It does feel quite soft, and that is for another reason. What I'm going to do is actually slice this one in half first, and then I'm going to cut it into some slightly different sort of shapes to what I usually do, and that is gliding through very nicely and get to the end. And now what I'm going to go and do is grab one of my other cutters and we're going to cut this into bars. Okay, so I realised just after I popped that through the log splitter, you guys haven't seen my log splitter yet. I have actually made another video, which won't be this weekend's video, but probably the weekends after, and you'll see how I use that log splitter for the first time. But this is what this soap looks like all cut. I am loving all those different speckles of colour from those bits of soap that actually didn't completely melt down. Because we did whip it, we have got a few little air bubbles, but those air bubbles are going to be well worth it for when I actually get this cut and I show you why I decided to whip it. Now I am cutting these into, you know, slightly smaller bars, mainly because this bar of soap has been a bit of fun, and what I'm going to end up doing with it is giving them away in orders and at markets. Now I'm very pleased to say that the fragrance oils or the essential oils in this have held really well, and that is because we actually didn't have to do any sort of saponification process in it, so it has stayed nice and strong in that bar of soap. What I'm going to do is get all of these cut up because they're pretty much going to be the same all the way through, with that little bit of speckle, a couple of little air bubbles here and there, and then I'm going to come back and show you why I decided to do the rebatch soap the way I have. Right, so I've got myself a bowl of nice warm water here, and I've got one of these pieces which I've actually chopped in half again. And the reason I wanted to do it this way is because, look at that, it floats. Because of all the air that you actually whip into it, this soap will now actually float. So it really is a bit of fun. It's not going to last as long as a normal bar of soap will, but it'll be really good if you've got little kids in the bath and you've got the soap and you drop the soap in the water and it's going to float to the surface, so you don't have to go searching for that bar of soap at the bottom. So I actually really like this idea. I think it will be nice and fun to give away to my customers as well. I think they'll really enjoy that, especially the ones with young kids. So I am going to actually leave these on the curing rack for about another 2 weeks just to harden them up a little bit more. It is so much fun to play with. I've got a really nice lather on it, and I am so thankful that I stumbled across that video by Kenny over at Royal Appleberry. Go and check her out. She is an absolute hoot to actually watch as well. So I hope you have enjoyed watching how I've rebatched my soap, and maybe it's given you a little bit of an idea to have a go with yours as well. If you did, why not leave me a thumbs up and any comments down below. If you've got any questions, I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. And until the next video comes out, I hope you have a great one. I'll see you then. Bye.